senior lecturer at Lancaster University in the United Kingdom. Robert, good morning to you. What's uppermost in your mind right now? The politics, the violence, the blame? What exactly?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind as I was watching this last night and reflecting on it this morning is if the majority of that crowd hadn't been white, I think we would have seen a very different police response. And certainly there's a lot of question right now about whether security was adequate and if it was also a racialized response. We saw when there were Black Lives Matter protests earlier in the year, we had police standing around monuments and controlling the streets of Washington, D.C. But because this crowd that came to support Donald Trump and now stormed the Capitol tended to be, not all, but tended to be white, the police really had held off. It was just shocking to see that sort of response. And I think we have to ask questions about why we think that this group wasn't going to be violent when we saw that that's what Trump's been calling for since the first campaign, and certainly was organized over social media in the public domain while Trump was speaking.
Do you think it's too simplistic to say that the people who stormed the Capitol were manipulated by whoever that might be? We had a guest earlier tell us that actually this was a coup attempt, not like you see in many other countries, but it was definitely a coup attempt as far as that analyst was concerned.
Well, it certainly does seem like something I would refer to as a coup, not just in terms of the crowd, but in terms of what was going on inside the Capitol itself with lawmakers trying to overturn the legitimacy of this election. This was something we haven't seen before. We've seen, people protest the counting of ballots in previous elections decades ago, but we didn't see an actual attempt in terms of force and in terms of within the government itself to operate. We also saw a slow movement to use National Guard, and so there were lots of aspects there that really did seem to not look like what we'd expect from a Western world, and certainly from the United States. I think that there are concerns about then going forward what this means for Joe Biden's inauguration day. I mean, it looks like Donald Trump's probably going to skip town for that to begin with. But what's he going to call for in terms of getting people to respond physically as well as philosophically on their social media feeds?
Robert, do you think this is going to be forgotten, or could it be actually a spark that produces something that lasts for that much longer? I mean, it's almost as if the gestation period of 4 years of the MAGA movement is now ended and MAGA is finally born. I mean, the world will have watched what was happening there in Washington on Wednesday afternoon and think, sorry, this just doesn't compute.
Well, there are so many layers to this, and if I just bullet point them really fast, I think that might be a disservice to them. But also, this was certainly "Make America Great Again" coming to its fruition. And, these are people who thought that these are the people's houses, and we have the right to take back our government, and we feel that it's going astray. That's certainly how we remember the United States coming together, breaking from the United Kingdom, and certainly they're standing in the Hall of Statues by all these people who were revolutionaries and rebels and people who turned to violence as a way to create the nation. And so there were some, collective memory aspects of what was going on. But we also have a collective forgetting that's already starting, where Republicans in name only, or Rhino, right, and others are saying, well, these weren't really Republicans storming the Capitol. This was Antifa. These were lots of other fringe groups. This wasn't the Republican Party. And another layer also of Mitch McConnell and others coming out and saying that U.S. democracy is always fair and is always free and should always be open, which veils a lot of what Americans know from both the right and the left about how U.S. government does disenfranchise, how it doesn't allow felons to vote. If you're in jail, you lose your right to vote. If you're from a poor neighborhood, you lose your right to vote. If you're part of gerrymandering, the changing of districts, you lose your right to vote. And so there are lots of layers to all of these different things. That doesn't mean that it's that storming the Capitol, I'm not justifying it or not. I'm just saying there are so many layers here. So watching this from outside, while shocking, is also a physical representation of the contestation of a nation at its core. And certainly now within the Republican Party, that the Republicans are going to have to decide: is that who we are, or are we something different?
So many questions. Robert, thank you so much indeed. It's always a pleasure to have your analysis. Robert Gutsche from Lancaster University.